everybody, it's Brock and we got a brand new episode of All About. Today we're learning about a new hitchhiker that might be in your own tank and you don't even realize it. The Spionid worm. These creatures can turn from hitchhiker to a major pest quickly in a reef tank if not taken care of. We're going to be learning about what they are, how they even got into my tank, are they harmful, and how can I get rid of them. So, what is a Spionid worm? They're going to be a marine worm that you'll usually notice by seeing a white string poking out of the sand bed or even from the live rock hovering around as if it's trying to grab something. Similar to the way feeder tentacles sway on a coral to catch food. They have these appendages that they're using to search for their next meal. They're using their own mucus to grab surrounding sand, detritus, and whatever else they can get their hands on in order to create these tubes you usually find them living in. These worms have been studied for their ability to regenerate, and they also pose a big problem to commercial shellfish. As they bounce that arm around, they're actually looking for leftover food, just detritus, just anything they can get their hands on to eat throughout the day. So, how did these guys even get in my tank? In most cases, you get this hitchhiker from your live rock that you purchased. They can burrow deep in the crevices, any holes in a rock, and they're going to come out later and make home. They can also be on coral frags, so tiny that you can't even tell that they're on them. The naked eye really can't see them, and they can even be on a plug that's been in some water or even a piece of rubble rock. As long as they can grab onto it, they're going to be there. So it's near impossible to keep these from hitchhiking into your tank. So if you're buying live rock or you're buying corals, you can see you're going to get these eventually. Which definitely leads into the next question is, are they harmful? They are not harmful to your fish. These little worms have no intention of trying to catch your fish and eat it unless there was just a dead fish that had fallen right beside it for him to be able to grab onto. Otherwise, them hitting a fish, they're not going to harm it and they're not going to be able to have the strength to actually grab one and pull it in. They are, however, harmful to your corals. So those tentacles will sting and they're going to bother surrounding corals when they touch. You can see in the video these worms are hitting the frog spawn coral that is causing it to stay shrunken up, and some of the head is even dying off because of it. These critters can even be so bad as to encrust onto the SPS coral itself, which can cause really bad damage to the surrounding colony. You can find them in all different places. You'll hear people talking about their zoas staying shrunk up, and it ends up being one of these guys that's right in the middle of them, just swaying that arm around, keeping them all closed up. As long as they aren't near your coral, they really don't pose an issue because they're just going to swing that arm around and catch leftover food to eat it. But if they are touching corals, you definitely want to do something about it. The next question you'll ask is, how can I get rid of them? So this can be rather difficult for similar pests like vermitid snails. You can easily see the base of that snail and get rid of it. For the spionid worms, you really can't see where they end unless they're just completely burrowed in the sand. For the ones you see in the video, they somehow made home in just the very tiny holes of my live rock, which makes it extremely difficult to try to pull them out. So what can you do? One of the best practices I've done and seen success with in my own tank is to smother them with reef glue. So it comes in a variety of products. Some of them is like a paste you can roll into your hand and you can use that to shove into the hole that the worm's burrowing in. There's also glue that looks just like super glue, which you can put in a syringe and squirt that into the burrow that the worm is in. So basically what that's going to do is it's going to cause the worm to now not be able to feed and move to a new home, causing them to eventually perish. Now, one thing you want to keep in mind is if you have a lot of these worms and you're trying to spend the day closing them all off, keep in mind that you'd want to keep your water levels in check and do water changes. So even though they are small, you're still talking about a bunch of worms dying in the tank over time, so this could cause ammonia, nitrates, phosphates to rise. So test your levels often, do your water changes after you go this route. The other route is to find a predator that eats them. Go the natural route and find a fish or crustacean that will find interest in the pest. So there is no perfect choice. It is really more about the luck of the fish or crustacean that you get taking a liking to them. But I can give you some suggestions to help give you the best chance at them being eaten. So the family of wrasse are always a big pest eater. 6-line wrasse, 4-spot wrasse, the real pretty yellow one, and Melanoris wrasse have always been known to keep your corals and even your fish pest-free. So those can always be a good chance to go after them. The other fish that you can see eating pests are filefish. Filefish are really dependent on aptasia though, so unless you get one that can eat from you, that can pose a risk in case they don't want to eat from you and they don't have any aptasias, and then they don't even go after the other pests in your tank. That can be a little bit of an issue for you, but I have heard people say that the filefish did go after them. Butterfly fish are also a really good choice, and probably the most common one that I saw online to go after these pests. One downside is you are limited to what butterfly you can choose if you have a reef tank, because most butterflies will pick at coral. The copper band butterfly fish tend to have the best luck in reef tanks. That might be the one to go for. Plus they got that long snout, so it really makes it perfect for going after these. Bumblebee snails are really big for eating vermitid snails, and so I've seen them in talks when discussing these worms too. I've never seen mine go after them. I have bumblebee snails that do go after my vermitid snails, but never seen them go after those. So another toss up. I've seen ones called whelk snails that have also been known to eat pests. For shrimp, the only one I've actually heard finding interest in them is the coral banded shrimp. They usually go after bristleworms, but you do see some things online where they say that they did go after these too. So that gives you a good list of what you can try. In most cases, like I said, it seems to be a toss-up. You hear some people had great luck and their fish was eating them like crazy. I personally have a 6-line wrasse in this tank that you're seeing the footage from, and he doesn't take any interest in them at all. So you never really know. So say you're having good luck and you're getting the population of these worms lower and lower in your tank. How can you keep them gone? So these worms are eating your leftover food and decaying matter in the tank, which is a majority of that is coming from your feeding. So overfeeding means these worms are getting more food, which in turn causes them to reproduce more, which then causes them to show up in more places around the tank. So that's obviously a big problem. So try lowering your feeding, or another big thing is turn your power heads off when you do feed. That way it gives your fish plenty of time to run up there, eat all the food that you fed, and there's not so much floating around the tank. With feeding, you also want to make sure your filtration does not need to be changed, because once that filtration runs through, it'll catch that leftover food for you instead of all these pests getting that food. So maybe you need to lower your feeding, check that filtration, make sure it's doing the best it can. The other thing that can be hard, but it is still good practice, is to check the rock and the frag plugs that you're buying. You see pests covered on it, you probably should not put it into your display tank just yet. There are posts online you can read about where people are trying different chemicals to put into the tank to wipe them out. But at the end of the day, you're dealing with a natural hitchhiker in a saltwater tank. They're going to eat your leftover food, and unless they're stinging your surrounding corals, you really don't have to worry about them because they don't pose much of an issue. So for me, I always try to either go the natural route or just a way you can smother them. But if you do want to go down the chemical route, you can definitely look on into it. A lot of people have posted stuff out there for it. And we'll close it off there. I hope you learned a thing or two and can add some helpful tips to your toolkit. If you've dealt with these worms, leave your experience down below for future reefers to read about. Hope everyone has a great weekend. Stay safe, be kind, and I'll see y'all later.